Imagine living your life after 50 and feeling energized and excited about your future. Welcome to the Women in the Middle podcast, the podcast for women who are ready to figure out what they want and create the life they deserve. Here's your host and Master Certified Life Coach, Susie Rosenstein.
Hey there, today we're talking about fear of swimming and finally learning how to swim as an adult. Let's go. Welcome back to the podcast Women in the Middle. I'm your host, Susie Rosenstein, your Master Certified Coach and Midlife Mentor, and I am so glad to be here with you again. Now, as you probably know, because I talk about it all the time, my mission is to help you stop living like time doesn't matter in midlife. I care so much about raising awareness about wasting valuable time. You know, being in an autopilot fog, you might have more of this going on in your life than you think, and life is just too short for this kind of stuff. Being more intentional is really where it's at. And not being able to swim later in life could be one of those things that you're kind of, you've been in an autopilot fog about. Just decade after decade might go by, and you still don't know how to swim. I've met a couple of adults in my adult life, that don't know how to swim. And it's something that, they really wanted to break through, but there was just so much fear about it. Anyway, I have a really great guest today. I was fascinated by this topic. We're going to take a deep dive, yep, that is a little pun, into what it's like to learn how to swim later in life, fear and courage and all. But just quick, there are two things I want to make sure that you know about. Now, as a listener of the Women in the Middle podcast, I wanted to make sure that you knew how we can work together to help you find clarity, confidence, and joy in midlife without wasting any more time feeling stuck. In the end, it's all about regret-proofing your life, my friend. And it's the fastest way I know to rediscover joy and purpose after 50. I really believe this. So I have a variety of options available, both private and group coaching. The best thing to do if you're curious about what it would be like to coach together and actually put yourself first is to just reach out and see what might be a good fit for you. And to do that, it's best to book a call. So just head over to www.talktosusie.com. And the other thing is that I now have a quiz that will help you find out what's keeping you stuck and how to move toward the life you've been putting off. It will help you understand what your future self is craving. It's free, it's fun, and it's fast. So just go to www.midlifequiz.com and help yourself get the insight you need to go after what it is you're excited about in your next chapter so that you don't have regrets. Because that is a bummer. You don't want regrets. Again, just go to www.midlifequiz.com. Okay, now let's dive in. My guest today is Cori Myka. Today's interview is about learning to swim, but as an adult in midlife. So you might be having a flashback now to whatever happened to you with being a kid and learning how to swim. Maybe you took lessons, maybe you figured it out yourself, or maybe you got thrown in. It happens. Whatever it was, I'm sure it's bringing back memories because learning to swim really did take some bravery. Now, Cori has spent over 25 years transforming the way adults learn to swim. She's also the founder of Calm Within Adult Swim, with over 25 years of experience in adult swim education. She specializes in helping adults overcome the fear of water through a unique blend of mental and physical training techniques. Her mission is to empower individuals to become confident swimmers and embrace personal growth by working with students and certifying instructors. Talk about conquering your fears. This is one topic where it definitely comes up. I know you're going to love this interview, so please enjoy. Hi, Cori. Thanks so much for joining us today on the Women in the Middle podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
And I'm so glad, Cori, you've been so generous and patient with me as I ran through a few little tech problems as we got started.
No problem. This is what life is, right?
This is what life is, working at home when you don't have a tech support team. That's for sure.
Right. We just show up as we are. It's all good.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I was really excited to have you on. Swimming is a big deal in my family. Water safety is a big deal in my family. And when I saw what you do and what like what you offer in the world. I really, really wanted you on to share your story. So let's get started with talking about what was going on for you in your 40s and why were you looking to make a change?
Yeah, so I have always been in aquatics, in the world of aquatics. I think my first person I asked to teach to swim or said, I'll help you, Auntie, 5 years old, right? I can teach you how to swim. She was afraid to go off the houseboat into Lake Powell. But so it's something that's always been a life passion of mine. But of course, in swimming is generally kids. You think of it being about kids, and that's fine, and it's great. And I have kids, right? So I was in that whole machine of working a career and doing in that direction. But it's when I started working with the adults that the sparkle just lit up with me. And I mean, it even connected to when I was teaching lessons as a teenager, my summer job, I can't remember any of those kids, but I can remember the adult that I worked with, right? I remember her and I remembered her story. And so as I'm going along building my career in my swim school, it was when I decided I'm going to lean into and figure out what's going on with adults who are beginning and fearful, because this excites me. This delights me, this investigation. This goes beyond moving arms and legs in the water. And so that was really the beginning of my journey of like, okay, this isn't just a job, it's a passion, right? And I get to do it because it feels good to me.
Now, what was it about the fascination? Were you curious about fear or hesitancy or what stories people were telling themselves about what they were capable of and what they weren't capable of? What about it really resonated with you?
Yeah, well, it was so I could get an adult to swim across a pool and they do something that people would say, well, that looks like front crawl or freestyle, depending on how you want to call it. But then I'd ask them, well, how was it? And they'd have this like deer in the headlights look, and they'd look at me and they'd say, I have no idea. And I thought, okay, I'm doing something wrong here. I'm applying an old system, a tried and true system, a system that works for all of these kids that we are really good at teaching. I'm applying it to these adults and it's not working, even though technically they can do the skill. And so that's the part that was so curious building for me. And it's kind of like in anything in life, right? You tick all the boxes, you do all the things, but yet you're like, this doesn't feel like my grown-up life. Like something is missing here. And so that's the part that really hooked me in, was to kind of say, okay, well, what is missing? What's not happening for them to have them feel like a swimmer, to feel satisfied, to feel like they've got it. And so that's the place to lean in and to get curious with.
And when did you start to figure it out? What was the breakthrough for you as a leader in that area, as an instructor?
The breakthrough for me was to connect the idea of, generally speaking, mindfulness practices with a physical activity. Right? We have like meditation, or we have prayer, or we have focusing, or whatever. Like this is a thing in the world. But I hadn't really seen it. It's when I started to see it and investigate it being applied to a physical activity. It's in combining those two things to realize we can't be checked out, right? We do a lot of things in life, but we're not really present to it. And then we don't have the experience of doing that thing that we actually desire. In swimming, the desire is to feel good, to feel connected to nature, to feel calm. We see these pictures of people just easily laying on the water and be supported, right? There's a certain feeling that we're going for when we want to, in this case, learn to swim. And without having this mindfulness piece, which is a general category to call it this, a mindfulness piece, a presence piece to it, even if you tick the box of doing the thing, you're missing that part. So it's when I started to lean into that I thought, that's really what's missing for people. A big piece of what's missing for people.
Yeah, and I've noticed it too with coaching so many midlife gals. We're so checked out and disconnected with our body in general. Even if you look at eating and understanding when you're full or enjoying your meal or not watching TV or playing with your phone while you're doing something. And it's not just women, it's everybody really, and I mean, the phones are going everywhere with us, including the bathroom. So many people are dropping their phones in the toilet. I've heard it many, many times, but it's very hard. It can be challenging to do one thing at a time. And with swimming, it is harder to multitask, but to connect, to do the other piece of it, like, so you're not being distracted with those other things. But what does it mean to be present? What does present moment functioning look like when you're in the pool?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like getting out of my head of all those YouTube videos that I watched that told me exactly the angle to put my hand in the water. And I should be flexing this part and pointing this part, right? That we get very in our head. Our society rewards us being in our head, thinking and analyzing all the time, and does not reward coming in and feeling what's happening in our body. I know if I push on the water by the way it feels, right? Either my hand slips through or my hand connects to the water. And I do that by feel. I don't do it by thinking about what that person on the video or what the teacher told me to do of how the exact way to hold my hand in. It's because I can feel it. And so we start with folks with that, feeling even before we get in the water. The other part of the equation, so there's the mindfulness, there's also the other part is how do I prevent trauma, overcome trauma, deal with the emotional aspect of the fear to calm, and even the other side of it. How can I experience joy, right? So there's the emotional component as well. So that comes up when we're sitting on the edge of the pool, being anxious that in the future I'm going to be in the ocean with some big whale that's going to eat me.
The whale won't do that. It's the sharks and the big fish that might do it. I always have to correct. With the whales, they're not going to eat you. Although on occasion a kayaker does get trapped while the whale is feeding. I have seen those videos.
Yeah.
But what scares me in the ocean is the barracudas. Because when you're snorkeling, they're always hovering around the boat. They like the shade under the catamarans, and I'm always afraid of the barracudas. But my mind goes crazy, and I do find myself when I am, because we've done some sailing trips, when I am floating around doing snorkeling, I do find myself thinking, am I okay? Is there a big scary fish coming at me around the corner? And I'm on guard. It's very hard for me to relax. In fact, the one time that I was most relaxed was when I saw a bunch of squid. I don't know what a group of squid is called, but when I saw a bunch of squid together and the waves were just beautiful in the water's edge. There were some rocks and waves, and they were moving with the water, and I was mesmerized. That was the most relaxed I'd ever been while snorkeling. But I know exactly what you're saying. There's so many things to think about when you are doing something novel. And a lot of times it's difficult to be a beginner as well. When you're used to being, as a midlife woman, you're used to being one of the wiser people in the group and the one with more experience. Does that come up too?
Oh, for sure. For sure. I mean, I will make the analogy for folks of like learning a new language. It's very hard with our analytical and big vocabulary to go to a new language where your vocabulary is that of an infant, right? Or a very young child. So it's a cognitive dissident, right? That's a challenging thing. And because when you watch experts do something, a big piece of it is their ease and flow.
Yes.
And so there's a misconception around swimming. Swimming, I mean, I really think this is we see people who are brand new to the water. Before we got on the call here, we were talking about drowning incidences. I've heard, had stories of drowning incidences for people who've just never been in the water because they're like, well, it looks really easy because for people who know how to do it, it is. And you just miss that piece of it. So your brain is like, wait a second, why does it look so easy? But yet it is easy, but not if we're not in tune with it. We don't take each
Mm.
step and we don't do it carefully.
Exactly, exactly. So let's get back to you for a second about thinking about how you can continue to have fulfillment and have your jollies as a career, because that is also novelty, desiring novelty as a professional as well as a beginner learning a new skill like swimming. So you mentioned in your show notes that after years of business and changes in your family life, including becoming an empty nester, that you were kind of craving this feeling to grow and evolve. Can you tell me what that was like for you? Because when it was happening to me, I was going out of my mind.
Hmm. Yeah, well, it's this desire, so much of that pre-empty nest, right, is so focused on launching these humans. And I think one of the best things that I did for myself is when I turned 50, I threw myself the biggest birthday party I've ever had. I hired a band. I just really decided to celebrate it and step into it and to notice and acknowledge that this was a bit like maybe turning 18, right? Where the world is kind of your oyster. Although when you're 18, there's all these kind of preset notions and ideas of what you're supposed to do.
Hmm.
So this is this beautiful moment of like, the world's my oyster, so to speak, right? Anything's game now. I've done all the things that I quote unquote need to do.
Yeah.
So then now, okay, I've got the whole second half. I'm a little smarter. I have a little more money. And so I again leaned into what am I most curious about? What is my desires? And I mean, to be perfectly honest, that's really still the place that I'm in of like, okay, keep leaning into these curiosities and desires, because I don't have to know exactly where they're going to go.
No, you don't.
Yeah, it's more being open to the creative space, like I was when I first was figuring out how to work with adults. I spent a lot of time putting a little bit of something out there and then just being quiet and being with it and just seeing how that rolls and then put a little more energy into it and being with it and seeing how that rolls.
Well, I think the way you describe the lead up and wanting to celebrate, that's exactly why I wrote my little book, 50 Ways to Celebrate Life After 50, because this idea that there is what to celebrate. Like it's really all how you think about it. And it can
Mhm.
be constant celebration if you want. And I'm not saying life doesn't have its difficulties and trauma and sadness and all of the things. Of course it does. And there are also plenty of opportunities to celebrate and to embrace the unknown. We just want certainty, right? We just want certainty, and there is no certainty
No.
except what we can think in the present moment about what might be the best next step. And then when you lean into that, like you did, you get some new data points and it helps you clarify what the next best step is. And away you
Mhm.
go.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. One little micro step at a time.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah. And I think it's the one micro step at a time, but I also think it's about deciding um, what I'm going to make that step mean, how I'm going to have my own back in that step, right? When I step into the pool, it's to decide I am going to love myself through the process. I don't know what exactly and how exactly I'm going to do it. I don't know exactly if it's going to be quote unquote successful, but I'm going to love myself while I make an inquiry and get curious. And that makes a huge difference, takes a huge pressure off of it.
Now, when people find you, when they're looking to learn how to swim, Do they know that they're going to get a little bit more with you? A little bit more about how to also move through life?
Most of them do because, by and large, as adults, the adults who come to us, they have done swimming and have failed, right? Like, it hasn't worked. I need something different. And so they do spend a little time watching my YouTube videos or getting to know our philosophy. So I think there is that. And then there certainly are people, because it isn't super common teaching adult swimming. Most swim places you go to learn to swim, it's like they do kids, and sure, we'll throw somebody at the adults. So we do get people too who are just like, well, you're the only adult swim school around, so I decided you. But they're happy to know when they get here, you're going to take care of all of me. This isn't going to be pushy and scary and traumatic.
You just said something that really surprised me. There aren't a lot of places to get adult swim lessons, and aren't there tons of adults that don't know how to swim?
Yeah, half of adults don't know how to swim.
Half?
Half.
I don't even know what to say about that. That's so dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, there's an old Gallup poll survey, but I really don't think it has changed that much. 46% of people identify being afraid in deep water, and then 64% in oceans and lakes, so open water. So that's why I say it's about half that don't know how to swim.
Wow, I'm shocked by that. It just seems like a basic skill for life.
Yeah, well, and you as a swimmer, as a water person, right? Those are sort of the places in the circles that you're being in. So those are some of the, a lot of the people that you're seeing. It's something that people will actively choose not to engage in. It also is something that historically has been there's a gatekeeping on who can recreate and who can learn to swim and where you can swim. So that there's a historical piece to it and a historical narrative that has caused drownings in particular communities, right? And then that perpetuates itself. So it's kind of a self-perpetuating cycle. If you have somebody who's drowned in your family or your circle, you can go in and make sure everybody knows how to swim, or you can make sure everybody stays away from the water. So those are two very loving choices.
Interesting. Yeah. So, as an expert in your field, do you have anything particularly important that you want to share with this audience of listeners who are women over 50?
Well, I mean, the big thing is the idea that it's not too late. And learning to swim, I mean, is something, like you said, these novel, it's a very novel. It is different than anything else you're going to do in terms of the physics work differently, right? And so it's super novel and enjoyable. So it's a really interesting way to break yourself out of old patterns, especially when you're doing it in a very mindful kind of way. So it's just a really delightful thing. And it's something great we can do till we're very old for anybody who has those, like myself, creaky joints, things starting to happen. And so
that's a really good point, that it is something that you can do as you age. And it's, there's not everything we can do. I remember when I started playing tennis, I looked around and I saw so many older people still playing tennis with knee braces and elbow braces, and they were like covered up completely with braces. And then from what I understand, it's the same thing with pickleball, and there's lots of injuries. And with swimming, it's really something that we can do as we age, and it's quite healthy for us to do.
It's very healthy for us. And it has a lot of rehab. I mean, there was a woman at my church she had a broken leg for 2 years. 2 years, this woman was walking around with a broken leg. This is how much she was in tune with living with pain. She just thought, yeah, that's just the pain of my body. But yeah, she will be in the pool, rehabbing in the pool because she can't weight bear on it, but she can continue to develop and move her body because the pool will take that weight off of that leg so she can keep moving. And it does get easier, the learning to swim, because we get more buoyant as we get older too. So that's a little extra bonus too. If you ever
Oh,
worried about sinking.
now one of the things I know that you really want to emphasize is that swimming isn't just about strokes. And you started to talk about that. And I know it's so easy to get hung up on technique, like you're saying, but it's really about freedom and adventure. And like you said, having your own back, developing self-trust. Um, what would you say to somebody who is just really afraid to start?
Yeah, I mean, you want to, as you had said earlier, it's one tiny step. What is one tiny step that I can take? I mean, listening to this podcast, right, is a tiny step. And I would say it's not only listening to this podcast, but then telling yourself, look at me. I stayed on and I listened and I was curious. And to have a sense of joy and filling yourself up with, that's a step. I took a step. I leaned into, I keep listening and learning and growing. I'm that kind of person, right? That's the thing that we want to keep developing. So we got to honor it in the tiniest steps. We very quickly can be like, it just made me say, that's something I can't do, or right, we can be very critical about ourselves, but really honoring those tiny, tiny steps. And then I'd say, another tiny step is watch some of my videos, learn a little bit more about how it could happen. We have all of our stuff is online so that we do have to have ways to help our system get prepared, our emotional and physiological systems to get prepared. Say, the best way to learn to swim is without even having to get in the swimsuit. Start behind your computer. It's okay, right? You can start there and then take tiny steps forward.
That's fascinating. And that reminds me when you start to think about shifting from this is difficult, I can never do this, I'm too old, to what if it is possible? And what if it's not as hard as I think? What if it's not quite as scary as I think? What if it's easier than I think? That
Yeah.
always shocks me when I catch myself in one of those loops.
Yeah. Well, and what if I have what it takes? What if the lessons that I've learned in other areas of my life actually prepared me perfectly for this moment?
That's
Yeah.
so good. And
Mm.
what do you have to say about fear? Because fear only has power if you give it power. It's such a common emotion, though, with swimming when you're an adult and you don't know how to swim.
Mhm.
How do you manage somebody who's just super, super afraid and has given fear a ton of power?
Well, one of the things we want to start with is to honor and recognize fear, the role of fear, right? We don't want to start with shaming and blaming ourselves for having the fear. So fear, it's a very normal and very useful emotion. So when we give it space, we're not like pushing it down. We're allowing it to say, okay, well, what is it that you're warning me of? Equate it oftentimes to fire. It's useful to have some fear of fire, right? We don't want to
Yeah.
just stick our hand in fire and leave it there.
No,
It's a
we
bad
don't.
idea.
No, we don't want that.
No, but we don't want to be consumed by our fear. We want to use it as a gentle guide, that there's something that it's warning us about. And hand in the fire, right? When you get your hand too close to it, you can feel too much heat. You want to use some of that heat to cook your marshmallow,
Of course.
but you don't want to cook your hand, right? So it's when we slow down and we tap into ourselves and we can feel into ourselves, we can have what I call this infinite 1% of change over time. In society, we're told we have to go all or nothing, right? But the truth is, we only need to have 1% of change. And you keep doing that little tiny bit over and over and over again. Put that on a chart, and over time, that's what adds up to huge changes that come in your life in a very gentle and connected sort of way. And that's how we can heal fear and build trust.
That's so good. Thank you so much for sharing that. So, the other thing that I really love that you're saying is that not only does fear not have to hold you back, and you're never too old to learn the new skill of swimming or swimming more confidently, but also that midlife is the perfect time to rewrite this narrative, this story, whether it's in the water, on the water, in the water, or in your life. Like just because you think you suck at swimming or you're not as cool as you want to look in the water just yet, or confident as you want to be, it doesn't mean that you can't get better.
Right. Leaning in with this gentle, calm curiosity is such the key to be able to make tiny changes or big changes in however we're most curious or where we desire. Isn't that fun to go where we desire?
Oh, it's the best. If only we would allow ourselves.
I know.
So, how can we get a hold of you? Where can we find you?
So the easiest way is adultswimlesson.com. That's our website. And then you can find us in the social media under Adult Swim Lesson.
Amazing. This is great information. So if you are listening right now and you want to contact Cori for more information, head over to her website at adultswimlesson.com for resources and guidance. And if you happen to be in the area locally, where are you again, Cori?
I'm in Seattle.
If you are local, you may want to check out how you can learn directly from Cori and her team and perhaps even attend a retreat. How exciting is that?
So fun.
That sounds a lot of fun. Thank you so much for joining us today, Cori. This information is so important. And your take on it, kicking it up a notch, really broadening it out to what's really going on with adults and improving their swimming is it's life-changing. So thank you so much for trusting your own instinct about how you wanted to be fulfilled in your work and realizing your gift and passion of how you want to show up in the world.
Thank you so much for having me. This is great fun.
Okay, that's it for this episode. I don't know about you, but I just found myself thinking about how much fear people must have if they can't swim as adults. You know, all those situations that you might be in on a beach or at a pool or on a lake, in a boat, so many situations that if you don't know how to swim, it's been a real issue for you and you probably weren't able to enjoy as much as you could have. I was shocked by that 50% statistic too. I don't know. How about you? And to turn that around, it's like so many things that you might be thinking about changing now in midlife. You know, when you're a beginner again, and then there's usually some fear involved. And like everything, the dial doesn't move by accident. So hats off to those learning how to swim in midlife as an adult or whenever you can. It's just another skill that you can learn no matter your age. You've got this. All right. Thanks so much for listening to the Women in the Middle show. My focus as your regret-proofing midlife coach is to help you waste less valuable time and get on with the good stuff. Remember, being the queen of your brain domain is the best way to be. My friend, it is time to stop waiting for the right moment and start creating the happiness, excitement, joy, and fulfillment that you crave. So reach out if you'd like to talk about coaching together. I've got several options that might be a good fit for you. Just head over to www.talktosusie.com. And don't forget to check out my new midlife quiz to discover what's been keeping you stuck and learn what your future self is craving. Go to www.midlifequiz.com. For show notes and links, head over to www.susierosenstein.com and click on the podcast tab and look for episode 434. You'll also see a link there for my other show, The Women in the Middle Entrepreneurs, which is all about the reality of running your business when you're a midlife gal. It's on iTunes, Spotify, and all the places. Let's do this, ladies. It's time for you to put yourself first, one thought at a time. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll talk to you next week.